My father left me $1. Not $10. Not 100. $1. I stared at the check lying inside the lawyer's office and felt something inside me finally break. The room was silent except for the ticking wall clock. My older brother, Daniel, sat across the table pretending not to look at me. My younger sister, Rachel, looked down at her hands. And the lawyer cleared his throat before speaking words I would never forget. According to your father's will, Daniel receives the house and land. Rachel receives the investment accounts. And Michael. His eyes met mine. You receive $1. I laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it hurt too much to cry. $1. That was apparently what my father believed his youngest son was worth. The man had died 3 days earlier. And somehow, even from the grave, he had found a way to reject me one last time. I grabbed the check. Keep it. The lawyer looked uncomfortable. It's legally yours. I pushed back my chair. Then frame it. Nobody stopped me as I walked out. Nobody except Rachel. She caught me in the hallway. Michael, wait. I turned. What? Tears filled her eyes. I don't understand this either. Really? She nodded. Dad loved you. I laughed bitterly. No. Dad tolerated me. That's not true. Then explain the $1. She couldn't. Because nobody could. Not even me. And that was the problem. For most of my life, I had believed my father and I were close. At least until the last 2 years. That was when everything changed. It started after Mom died. Dad became distant. Quiet. Cold. The phone calls stopped. The family dinners became rare. The man who once called me every Sunday suddenly acted like speaking to me was a chore. At first, I blamed grief. Then I blamed myself. Eventually, I stopped trying. But now? Now it felt obvious. He hadn't been grieving. He had been pushing me away. And somehow, I never saw it coming. That night I sat alone in my apartment staring at old family photographs. Pictures from fishing trips. Birthday parties. Christmas mornings. Mom smiling beside Dad. Dad teaching me to ride a bike. Dad cheering at my high school graduation. How could that man leave me $1? Nothing made sense. My phone rang. Daniel. I ignored it. A minute later he called again. Then again. Finally I answered. What? His voice sounded tired. We need to talk. No, we don't. Michael. Enjoy the house. Silence. Then he said something strange. It isn't what you think. I sat upright. What does that mean? Another silence. Too long. Then he sighed. Forget it. The line went dead. I stared at the phone. What wasn't what I thought? The inheritance? The will? Dad? For the first time all day, a small feeling of doubt appeared. But it disappeared quickly. Because the next morning something happened that made everything worse. I went to Dad's house. Daniel was already there. So was Rachel. And neither of them expected me. I froze when I noticed several cardboard boxes stacked in the living room. Dad's office door stood open. Daniel immediately stepped in front of it. My stomach tightened. What are you doing? Cleaning up. Without me? Rachel looked nervous. It's complicated. I laughed. Of course it is. Daniel folded his arms. Michael, not now. No. Right now. I pointed toward the office. What are you hiding? His jaw tightened. Nothing. That answer alone told me everything. Because people with nothing to hide don't answer like that. They don't block doorways. They don't avoid eye contact. And they definitely don't act guilty. I pushed past him. Inside the office, drawers had been emptied. Files were scattered everywhere. Several folders were missing. The safe door stood open. Empty. Completely empty. What was in there? Nobody answered. I turned toward Daniel. What was in the safe? Private documents. I laughed. Private documents. Rachel looked like she wanted to cry. That only made me angrier. Because now it felt obvious. Dad hadn't simply cut me out. Daniel and Rachel knew why. And they were covering it up. For the next 3 weeks, the evidence kept growing. Daniel made repeated trips to the bank. Whenever I asked why, he changed the subject. Rachel received mysterious envelopes in the mail. She refused to explain them. Several times I caught both of them whispering together. Every conversation ended the moment I entered the room. Then I discovered something else. Dad had withdrawn nearly $80,000 during the final year of his life. $80,000. Nobody could explain where it went. Not Daniel. Not Rachel. Not even the lawyer. The money had vanished. And somehow, everyone seemed determined to keep me from finding out why. One evening I confronted Rachel. We were standing outside a grocery store. Rain fell softly around us. Tell me the truth. She looked exhausted. I can't. Can't or won't. Her eyes filled with tears. Please stop. Stop what? Hurting yourself. I stared at her. What does that even mean? She shook her head. I wish Dad had told you. The words hit me like a punch. Dad had told them something. Something important. Something they were hiding from me. And suddenly I knew exactly what I believed. My father hadn't forgotten me. He hadn't made a mistake. He had intentionally cut me out. And Daniel and Rachel knew why. But the worst discovery came 4 days later. Because that was when I found a receipt hidden inside one of Dad's old books. A bank receipt. Dated 6 months before his death. The amount made my heart stop. $250,000. Transferred into an account I had never heard of. An account that wasn't in Dad's name. It was in Daniel's. My hand started shaking. $500,000 missing. Secret accounts. Hidden files. Whispered conversations. And a $1 inheritance. For the first time, I became certain. My father hadn't betrayed me alone. My brother had helped him do it. And when I finally decided to confront Daniel directly, I had no idea a phone call was already on its way. A phone call that would destroy everything I thought I knew. The bank manager called at exactly 9:17 on a Tuesday morning. At first, I almost ignored it. The number wasn't saved in my phone. Normally, I would have let it go to voicemail. But something made me answer. Hello? Is this Michael Carter? Yes. This is Thomas Reynolds from First National Bank. My stomach tightened immediately. Bank. Dad. Daniel. The missing money. It all crashed together inside my head. I need to speak with you regarding your late father's account. I stood up so quickly my coffee spilled across the table. What about it? There was a pause. Then he said the sentence that changed everything. Your father instructed us to contact you exactly 30 days after his death. My heart started pounding. What? Mr. Carter left very specific instructions. I couldn't breathe. For weeks I had believed I knew the truth. For weeks I had convinced myself my father hated me. Now suddenly a bank manager was telling me there was more. Much more. "When can you come in?" he asked. "I'm leaving right now." The drive felt endless. Questions raced through my mind. Why 30 days? What instructions? What hadn't I been told? When I arrived, Thomas Reynolds personally greeted me. He looked to be in his 60s. Kind eyes. Gray hair. Professional but strangely sympathetic. As though he already knew what I had been through. He led me into a private office. Then he placed a thick envelope on the desk. My father's handwriting covered the front. For Michael. My chest tightened. I hadn't seen Dad's handwriting since before he died. Suddenly this wasn't about money anymore. It was about him. The man I thought had abandoned me. Thomas sat quietly. "Your father visited me 6 months ago." I stared at the envelope. "He did?" "Several times." My confusion deepened. Dad hated banks. Always had. He preferred cash. Simple investments. Nothing complicated. So why was he suddenly making secret visits? Thomas continued. He created specific instructions. What instructions? The bank manager hesitated. Before I answer that, I need to ask a question. What? Did you receive $1 in the will? The words felt like a knife. Yes. His face fell. As though he expected that reaction. Then he quietly nodded. He thought so. I stared at him. What does that mean? Instead of answering, Thomas handed me the envelope. My hands shook. Inside was a letter. A letter written by my father. I unfolded it. The first sentence nearly stopped my heart. Michael. If you're reading this, then you're probably angry enough to hate me. Tears instantly filled my eyes. Because somehow. He knew. He knew exactly how I would feel. The letter continued. And every word made me more confused. I know you think I abandoned you. I know you think the dollar means I loved you least. But son, if I've done this correctly, it means the opposite. I blinked. Opposite? What was he talking about? My eyes moved faster. I wish I could explain everything face to face. Unfortunately, life didn't give me that chance. What happened next made my stomach drop. Dad revealed something nobody had ever told me. 2 years earlier. The same year he began acting distant. He had been diagnosed with terminal cancer. I froze. Cancer. The word echoed inside my head. No. No. That couldn't be true. Dad had never said anything. Not once. Not ever. I looked up at Thomas. The bank manager slowly nodded. It's true. I felt dizzy. My father had been dying. And I never knew. The letter continued. I wanted to tell you. More than anything. But I remembered how your mother suffered during her final years. I remembered watching you break every single day. And I couldn't do that to you again. Tears blurred the page. Mom. Dad had hidden his illness because of Mom. Because he knew what losing her had done to me. Suddenly every strange behavior started replaying in my mind. The distance. The missed calls. The cancelled dinners. The coldness. But I still didn't understand. What did cancer have to do with the inheritance? Then I reached the next page. And my entire world collapsed. Because Dad revealed where the missing money had gone. Not to Daniel. Not to Rachel. Not to secret investments. Not to another family. To me. Except I didn't know it. For nearly 2 years, Dad had secretly paid off every debt I owed. Every credit card balance. Every medical bill. Every late mortgage payment. Every financial emergency. My mouth fell open. I looked at Thomas. This isn't possible. It is. But I never received money. Thomas nodded. That was intentional. Dad had used anonymous trusts. Private transfers. Third-party payments. Methods designed to hide his involvement. He never wanted me to know. Why? Because years earlier, I had once told him something. Something I barely remembered saying. I don't want handouts, Dad. I want to stand on my own. And apparently, he never forgot. The room spun. My father had spent years protecting my pride. While I convinced myself he didn't care. But the biggest revelation was still waiting. Because the letter wasn't finished. Not even close. Dad explained why Daniel's account had received the huge transfer. My brother wasn't stealing from me. He was managing something. Something Dad had spent years building. Something hidden. Something meant for only one person. Me. My hands shook violently. The final page contained only one sentence. Michael. The dollar was never your inheritance. It was the key. Then attached beneath the letter was a number. A safety deposit box number. And a note. Daniel knows where it is. The silence inside the office became unbearable. Everything I believed was wrong. Daniel hadn't betrayed me. Rachel hadn't betrayed me. Dad hadn't abandoned me. Yet one question remained. What was inside that box? Why hide everything? Why make me believe the worst? And most importantly, why had Dad gone to such extreme lengths? I left the bank in tears. Not because I had answers. Because now I had too many questions. I drove straight to Daniel's house. This time I wasn't angry. I was desperate. When he opened the door and saw my face, he immediately knew. The bank called. I nodded. Tears streamed down my cheeks. For several seconds neither of us spoke. Then my brother started crying too. And when he finally told me the truth about the safety deposit box, I realized the greatest sacrifice my father ever made wasn't financial. It was something far more heartbreaking. Something that would change the way I remembered him forever. The greatest mistake of my life wasn't believing my father hated me. It was never asking why he looked so tired. Why he seemed so distant. Why his eyes carried a sadness I couldn't understand. As Daniel stood in his doorway crying, I realized something that made my chest ache. For 2 years, my father had been carrying a burden alone. And I had mistaken his pain for rejection. Come inside, Daniel said quietly. I followed him into the living room. Rachel was already there. The moment she saw me, she knew. The bank called. I nodded. None of us spoke for a moment. The silence felt heavy. Not awkward. Heartbroken. Finally, Daniel sat across from me. There's something Dad made me promise. What? His eyes filled with tears. He never wanted you to know how sick he really was. I swallowed hard. Why? Daniel looked down. Because he was terrified. Of dying? No. His voice cracked. He was terrified of watching you lose another parent. The words hit me harder than anything I'd heard so far. I remembered Mom's final year. The hospital visits. The treatments. The nights I slept in waiting rooms. The day she died. I remembered breaking down in Dad's arms. And apparently, Dad remembered too. He told me something 6 months before he passed, Daniel said. What? Daniel wiped his eyes. He said, I already watched one person break my son's heart. I won't be the second. I couldn't breathe. Rachel started crying. So did I. Because suddenly everything made sense. Dad hadn't pushed me away because he stopped loving me. He pushed me away because he loved me too much. He couldn't bear seeing me suffer through another goodbye. And somehow that truth hurt even more. Then Daniel reached into a cabinet. From inside, he pulled out a small metal key. The safety deposit key. Dad's final mystery. My hands trembled as I took it. What's inside? I whispered. Daniel shook his head. I don't know everything. You don't? No. Rachel looked surprised too. Dad never told us. What did he tell you? Daniel looked at me. Only that it belonged to you. The next morning, all three of us drove to the bank together. None of us talked much. The anticipation was overwhelming. What could possibly be inside a box important enough to hide behind a $1 inheritance? The bank manager greeted us immediately. Thomas looked almost emotional. As though he'd been waiting months for this day. He escorted us downstairs. Through a secure hallway. Past several locked doors. Finally we reached the vault. Thomas unlocked the box. Then stepped away. Take your time. My heart pounded. Slowly, I opened it. Inside sat a single wooden box. Old. Worn. Beautiful. And on top rested another handwritten note. For Michael. Only Michael. Tears immediately filled my eyes. I opened the note. Michael. If you've reached this point, then you finally know I never stopped loving you. The tears came instantly. I continued reading. Everything inside this box belongs to you. Not because you're my favorite. Not because you deserve more than Daniel or Rachel. But because you're the one person who doesn't know what you've already given me. Confusion washed over me. What had I given him? I carefully opened the wooden box. And my entire world stopped. Inside were hundreds of letters. Hundreds. Every one addressed to me. Some old. Some newer. Some yellowed with age. What are these? Rachel whispered. I opened the first letter. It was dated 27 years earlier. The year I was born. My hands shook as I read. Today you were born. And for the first time in my life, I understood what love feels like. I stared at the page through tears. The next letter was from my first day of school. Another from my 10th birthday. Another from my graduation. Another from the day Mom died. Letter after letter. Memory after memory. Love after love. For nearly 3 decades, my father had been writing to me. Not occasionally. Constantly. Every major moment. Every milestone. Every important day. The box wasn't filled with money. It was filled with a lifetime of love. And then I found the final letter. The one written only weeks before his death. By then I was sobbing openly. So was Rachel. Even Daniel couldn't stop crying. The letter began simply. Michael. If you're reading this, then I'm gone. I wish I could tell you this face to face. But some things are easier written than spoken. I took a deep breath. Then continued. When your mother died, you blamed yourself. You thought you should have done more. You thought you should have saved her. I watched that guilt destroy pieces of you. And I promised myself I would never let that happen again. That's why I hid my illness. Not because I didn't trust you. Because I loved you. The tears became impossible to stop. I remembered every angry thought. Every accusation. Every moment I believed he didn't care. And now all I felt was shame. The letter continued. The dollar wasn't meant to hurt you. It was meant to force you to ask questions. Because I knew if I simply gave you everything, you'd never discover the truth. And the truth matters more than money. I stared at the page. The truth. The truth was that my father had spent his final years secretly protecting me. Paying my debts. Planning my future. Writing letters. Preserving memories. Loving me. Even when I couldn't see it. Then I reached the final paragraph. And it completely broke me. One day you'll discover that inheritance isn't measured by dollars. It's measured by what remains in your heart after someone is gone. If you ever doubt whether I loved you, read these letters again. Every single one is proof. Love, Dad. The room dissolved into tears. For several minutes nobody spoke. Nobody could. I held that letter against my chest like it was the last piece of him I had left. Because in many ways, it was. Several months later, life slowly began moving forward. Daniel and I repaired our relationship. Rachel and I grew closer than ever. Every Sunday we gathered for dinner. Just like we used to. And every month I opened another one of Dad's letters. Sometimes I laughed. Sometimes I cried. Usually both. Then one evening I discovered a note tucked inside the final envelope. A note I had somehow missed. It contained only one sentence. The greatest fear of every parent is being forgotten. The greatest gift is being remembered with love. I sat alone in my living room for a long time. Holding that note. Thinking about everything I almost got wrong. I almost remembered my father as a man who rejected me. A man who left me $1. A man who didn't care. But the truth was something far different. He wasn't leaving me money. He was leaving me himself. And suddenly I understood. The secret inheritance was never hidden in a bank account. It was hidden in every sacrifice he made without asking for credit. Every debt he paid without telling me. Every letter he wrote when nobody was watching. Every act of love I never noticed until he was gone. Sometimes the people who seem far away are carrying the heaviest burdens. Sometimes what looks like rejection is actually protection. And sometimes, a $1 inheritance can be worth more than millions. Because money eventually disappears. But love, when it's real, becomes something death can never take away.